Hello and welcome to part 2 of Magnolia Woo Unfolds It All by Chanel Miller. Thank you for joining me in this second part as we begin on page 28.
Welcome to Wonderbook. You are in read-along mode. To start reading, press play. Or, to start at the beginning of this book, press the reset button. The black and white checkered box.
Here we go. Let's enjoy.
Outside, the sun was glowing, and the air was thick with gray clouds of exhaust, sounds of drilling, and ice cream trucks singing. There was a black dog licking a dripping fire hydrant, and cherry tomatoes set out like little jewels. Magnolia was thrilled by all of it, but she noticed that as confident as Iris had been pitching this idea in the equipment room, her demeanor on the street was entirely different. Now, Iris tucked herself slightly behind Magnolia, a wrinkle between her brows, staying close as trucks rumbled past. "If you get overwhelmed," said Magnolia, "look for the little things." She pointed to a flurry of pigeons. "What do you see?" said Magnolia. "Dirty birds," said Iris. "Okay, now focus your attention on one of them," said Magnolia. "I see a 5-inch tall pigeon, gray with a hint of purple feathers around its neck. I see it pecking at a pizza crust that's kind of in the shape of California." Iris nodded, and Magnolia thought Iris looked calmer, her attention now rooted on this single pigeon. "I got it," said Iris. Magnolia taught Iris to look left and right for cars before crossing the street, and then to look up and down for falling debris and puddles. She taught her that if you passed something stinky like rotting deli meat, you could hold your breath by inhaling, closing your mouth and puffing out your cheeks. She taught her cockroaches were less scary if you named them Itsy Bitsy Badadinga. If one scuttled past, you could say, "Itsy Bitsy Badadinga is here to party." As they continued down the street, Iris's shoulders slowly unfurled from their hunched position until she and Magnolia were walking side by side. In a corner of Washington Square Park, there was a cluster of stone tables where people stooped over black and white pieces, shaded by the trees. At one of the tables sat Carl, hands crossed over his belly, face turned up toward the sun. "Magnolia," said Carl. "Heard it was just your birthday." Magnolia nodded. "I still remember when you were this tall." He hovered his hand about 2 feet off the ground. Magnolia wondered why adults were always reminding her that she used to be smaller and was now larger.
Can you make that connection? Sorry also for the late page swap. I was writing something down, but has an adult ever said, "Oh my gosh, I remember when you were only this little," or "Oh my gosh, last time I saw you, you were only down to my knee and now you're up to my shoulder"? Has an adult ever talked about how much you've grown? Why do you think adults make comments like that? Maybe jot down this question and share it with a friend. I'm wondering if it's because you don't see them so often that if they see you once a year or every other year, that they're like, "Oh my gosh, you really have grown a lot in the last year since I've seen you."
What else were they expecting to happen? "What brings you out here?" he said. "You interested in the game?" "We're interested in finding the owner of this sock," said Magnolia, dangling the black and white checkered sock in the air. "Ah, it's not my sock. But I see you're playing your own game. You and your friend," said Carl. "Iris," said Iris, standing up a little taller. "You and Iris are 2 pawns. In the city is one big chessboard." He picked up 2 pawns and made them dance in the air. "Even if you make a wrong guess or go backward, you just keep moving, adapting as you go along. There'll be plenty of confusion and frustration, but there'll be surprises and small victories too. As if on cue, bird food dropped like a dollop of sour cream, splattering beside Magnolia's shoes. See? Pooh from the sky, our first surprise, said Carl, pulling a napkin from his front pocket. Magnolia took the napkin and bent down to wipe her shoe, while Iris tried to focus her attention on where it had come from. She looked up at the tree, and in the nook of one branch was a bird's nest that had been woven out of twigs.
Wow, I'm so distracted. I'm sorry. I'll do better.
Printed on the shreds of newspaper were tiny black and white squares. A crossword puzzle, said Iris under her breath. That's a brilliant suggestion, Iris, said Magnolia, standing back up. Great work. I know our next move. At Bing Chuling Bubbles, Lisa was the queen of crosswords, sitting on a fold-out chair, hair pulled into two buns, sipping coffee, and completing the New York Times crossword puzzle with a number 2 pencil. Lisa was a subway station agent, and whenever she got stuck on a word while stationed in her booth, she'd project her voice across the stream of passers-by and say, "What's a 4-letter word for seaweed?" Sometimes the sea of people would ignore her. Sometimes a single person would yell, "Kelp," and continue onward. When you need help, just ask for it, Lisa always said. So off the girls went to find Lisa at her subway booth, descending the stairs into the belly of the city, where the ground was pockmarked by old black stains of gum. They were met by a whoosh of warm air, a man drumming on overturned plastic buckets while singing Splish Splash, and a woman selling spears of mangoes. Subways are fun, said Magnolia. Subways aren't fun. Roller coasters are fun, said Iris, scrunching her shoulders up into her ears.
What do you think is fun? Magnolia says subways are fun. Are they fun to you? Iris said that roller coasters are fun. Can you think of another example of places or activities that are fun? Would you make an argument that yours is better than their ideas?
This is an old train in a heat dungeon. Why is that man tapping a metal bowl? That's a steel pan, said Magnolia. Magnolia saw Lisa sitting inside the glass booth, pencil tucked behind her ear, a peaceful presence in the bustling crowd. "Hi, girls," said Lisa. "Where are you trying to go?" "We have a question for you," said Magnolia. "Well, I have a question for you first," said Lisa. "What's a 9-letter word for tired?" "Sleepy," said Magnolia. "Pooped," said Iris. "Fatigued," said Magnolia. "Oh, I know. Exhausted," said Iris. "Exhausted, that's it," said Lisa. "Ding, ding, ding." EGGSAUCETED, said Magnolia. "That's 11 letters, not 9. Magnolia smiled, proud of herself. "Egg sauce?" said Iris, while Lisa laughed so hard she weeped.
What does this tell you about Magnolia's spelling capabilities? Exhausted is actually spelled like this, EXHAUSTED, but she spelled it how it sounds, egg sauced. It's kind of silly, isn't it? Have you ever spelled words silly like that before you knew how to actually spell them?
Magnolia shouldn't have said anything. If she'd kept quiet, she'd have never risked being embarrassed. Then again, if she kept quiet, she might as well be a stone. As Lisa caught her breath, she said, "I like the way you think, Magnolia. It's more creative. In crossword puzzles, there's a right and wrong way to spell things. Every letter has to fit neatly into its own little box. But the truth is, a dictionary could fill in this puzzle, but only a human could come up with that spelling. Magnolia had never thought of an error as a creative act. That's what makes you so smart. The imaginative part, said Lisa. English is too complicated anyway. I mean, why is there an X in exhausted? Makes no sense. Now, how can I help you? Magnolia stood on her tiptoes and pressed the black and white checkered sock against the glass of the food. Does this sound look familiar to you? Said Magnolia. Lisa shook her head. Not mine, but if you're helping out your parents, maybe you can help me out too. Would you mind taking my stack of newspapers to Mr. Mateo's barbershop? He likes keeping them around for customers to read. Just go back up the stairs, turn left, and enter through the black steel door. Going to Hair Barbershop and running into Luis again, so Magnolia instinctively smoothed down her bangs. She'd never actually been to Hair. In fact, she'd never had her hair professionally cut. When she was little, her mom would spray her head like a plant, place a bowl on top, and cut clean around the edge of it. Now she preferred to trim her bangs on her own. Iris and Magnolia hauled the stack of newspapers up the stairs and back out into the blazing sun. To their left was a black steel door, but it was blank, except for an image of a rabbit wearing glasses. Is this it? Said Iris. I don't know what the heck this is, said Magnolia. She craned her neck, peering down the block looking for other block doors. Iris focused her attention on the rabbit. Oh, the ears of the rabbit are the shears of the scissors, and the rabbit's eyeglasses are the rounded handle of the scissors, said Iris. So it's not a rabbit. It's a hare, said Magnolia. The hare must lead to Hair. Iris and Magnolia pushed open the door and walked down a narrow staircase. Downstairs, Hair had a strong, nutty oak scent and a large painting of a hare on the wall. Men sat in swiveling chairs, draped in black barber cloaks, at ease, talking and laughing. Others waited along the wall, while music played so loud it felt like a band was in the room. I didn't know beards could be so big, whispered Iris, like a squirrel exploded on someone's face. Iris set the newspapers down on a side table. All right, you did it. Let's go, she said. Hang on, said Magnolia. She was scanning the room for Luis. There he was, sweeping in the back. Magnolia's eyes watched him as he squatted to brush a layer of hair into a dustpan, the floor beneath him clearing up. I think we just solved our mystery, said Magnolia, as she pointed toward the black and white tiles. Iris clapped her hands together so loudly that Luis's head snapped up and he saw them. He set his broom against the wall and came over. Magnolia nudged Iris. You give it to him, Magnolia said. But you, said Iris. Luis stood before them. Iris pulled out the checkered sock and handed it over with a small curtsy. Hello, ta-da, I'm Iris, said Iris. Luis's face lit up. No way, Luis said, taking the sock. How did you find this? Magnolia's heart floated in her chest like a little balloon. One thing led to another, I guess, said Magnolia. So why the squares? Said Iris. My dad gave me these socks as a gift when I became old enough to sweep the floors, my first job. I was frustrated at first, wanted to go straight to cutting hair, but he said, every role has significance, no matter how small. That standing on this floor is a privilege. It's a sacred space. Magnolia looked at the floor that was littered with curls of dark hair and wondered what was so sacred about it. Hair's logo is the hair, Luis continued, pointing to the painting. Big ears for listening. My dad said, cutting hair is what makes you a good barber, but listening is what makes you great. Sometimes people get a haircut because they want a fresh beginning, like after a breakup or for a new job or the first day of school or something. And when they sit still in the chair for a long time, things start spilling out. You hear people's life stories. My dad said that's a gift, so I have to be ready to receive it. For now, though, I'm still sweeping. Magnolia wondered what would happen if she got her mom to sit still for an hour. What kind of stories would spill out? What would she share with Magnolia if she wasn't always busy doing things for other people? Louis stood before Magnolia with his hand held high, waiting for her to high-five it. Magnolia reached out and smacked it. "Thanks, you two," he said. Magnolia's palm felt like it was full of prickly heat. She cupped her hand slightly by her side, as if that contained the feeling. As Iris and Magnolia left here, Iris said, "You like leaves?" Magnolia shrugged. "I like a lot of things. I like leafy popsicles, I like air conditioning, and yeah, I kind of like Louise." Magnolia wished all socks would lead to Louise, but of course this would not be the case. On the bright side, it turned out that Iris and Magnolia were pretty good at this. As Carl had predicted, they'd made a few wrong turns, but as long as they persisted, they'd end up in exactly the right place. Suddenly, with a knapsack of socks on her back and a friend by her side, Magnolia felt like anything was going to be possible this summer. The pink knitted sock.
Before we continue in this chapter, make a prediction. Is she going to find the owner for every sock on the sock board? What do you guys think? What is a challenge that Magnolia and Iris are going to face? Think about a challenge. You're in the middle of a giant city. What are some challenges that you think they're going to face?
The following day, Magnolia sat on the doormat, lacing up her sneakers, eager to set off on their next adventure. Iris stood beside her, rifling through the knapsack, when their plans were abruptly interrupted. "Where are you going?" "Cousin Alan and Auntie May are coming over for lunch," said Mrs. Wu. When Magnolia and Alan were little, they used to put on fashion shows, wearing customized coats and sequined gowns, which they were 100,000,000% not allowed to do. Sometimes they painted pictures on paper. Then Mr. Wu would take the paintings to chopsticks and stick them in the dirt outside like little billboards, a free art gallery on the street. But over time, Alan had stopped coming by, preferring to study at home. He said art was a childish hobby and focused instead on piano and chemistry, while the adults oohed and ahed at his accomplishments. Magnolia once tried to connect with him through science and asked him to make a baking soda volcano. But Alan had scoffed and said it was a project for dull minds who played with kitchen ingredients and smelly vinegar. It was tradition for Auntie May and Al to bring over egg tarts around Magnolia's birthday. Those glossy yellow hockey pucks always put her in a sunny mood. But now all she wanted was to be outside with Iris. So when Mrs. Wu told Magnolia to run upstairs and make sure they had cilantro in the fridge, she let out a sigh. "What?" said Mrs. Wu. "I didn't say anything," said Magnolia, sprinting upstairs. The Wu's apartment upstairs was so small that everything touched another thing. The bed touched the table, which touched the chair, which touched the stove. To get around, one had to shuffle sideways. Iris perched herself on the edge of the sink, while Magnolia dug through the lower drawers of the refrigerator. "Can you stay and eat with us?" said Magnolia to Iris. "Please?" Magnolia grabbed the cilantro, slammed the refrigerator door shut, and pointed to a piece of art that had been stuck there with a magnet. It was a portrait of Mr. Pants. Alan's name spelled out across the bottom in large crooked letters. "Alan made that when he was 6, said Magnolia. "Good, right? But then he dropped all the art stuff and became boring and serious. Thinks he's better than everyone else because he can play Bach." The bell chimed downstairs. Magnolia rolled her eyes and walked down to greet them while Iris followed. Magnolia, you've grown so much, said Auntie May. What have you been doing this summer? Exploring, said Magnolia, taking a bite of the egg tart Auntie May held out to her. Magnolia licked a flaky crumb of crust off her lips as Auntie May brushed the bangs from her eyes. We've been all over the city. Good for you, said Auntie May. You're just like your mom. Like my mom? Said Magnolia. Your mom always used to sneak off when we were little, crawl under fences, through holes, over walls. I remember she'd come home right before dinner and say, check me. It was my job to check for leaves in her hair, pieces of grass in her ear, cobwebs on her shirt. I'd wipe the dirt off her face, make sure she was presentable before our mom had any questions about where she'd been. I think that's how she learned to sew, patching up her ripped shirts that snagged on thorny bushes. Magnolia found it impossible to imagine her young mom crawling through holes just for the fun of it. She'd never seen this adventurous, rebellious spirit Auntie May was describing.
Has your aunt or uncle ever shared stories about your parents that you just cannot believe? My mom has a sister, my aunt, and my dad has 5 brothers and sisters. So I got a lot of aunts and uncles who will tell me stories of my parents, and I'm like, no way were they this silly when they were younger. But they were. As you're an adult, you kind of have to mature up, especially if you have children like yourself who's reading this. But have you ever been in a situation where an auntie or even a parent's close friend is telling you about your parent and you're like, I cannot imagine. I've never seen that side of my parent before.
Now, if Magnolia so much as touched the crosswalk button, Mrs. Wu would squirt sanitizer into her hand. Magnolia, make yourself useful, said Mrs. Wu, as she set down bowl after bowl of steaming noodles on the folding table. As soon as they sat down, Alan turned to Magnolia's mom and said, how's business today? Who talks like that? Magnolia thought. Alan was 12, but acted like he was 30. Alan then switched over to speaking in Chinese, which meant Magnolia could only understand 1 out of every 6 words. She tried to string the words together to create a narrative in her head. She smiled when other people laughed, and nodded when people nodded. A part of her was glad to be tuned out. The conversation was always Alan this, Alan that. Meanwhile, Mrs. Wu was getting up and down, refilling tea, offering juice, and scooping more meat into their bowls. Alan, stop playing with your food, said Auntie May. Magnolia glanced up and caught her aunt removing the chopsticks from Alan's hand and setting them down on the table. Magnolia grinned, seeing Alan being reprimanded. The second everyone was done eating, Magnolia went around the table collecting everyone's bowls, eager to have an excuse for her and Iris to escape the conversation. As Magnolia washed the dishes, she vented to Iris. Do you get what I mean now? It's like all the interesting parts drained out of him. He's so pompous. Do you think Alan's happy? Said Iris, drying off a bowl with a dish towel. Why wouldn't he be? He's good at everything, said Magnolia. Magnolia tipped Alan's bowl into the sink, and a large clump of noodles slid out. The knot of noodles clogged the drain, the sink making a sound like it was choking. Ugh, said Magnolia. I'm the one who finished all of my food, and he's still the one who gets praised. You know what? I shouldn't have to clean up after him. Magnolia peeled off the rubber dishwashing gloves and threw them on the counter. Come on, let's go. They just brought out sunflower seeds, which means seed cracking and intense chatting for at least 30 minutes. Which sock is up next? Iris rummaged through her knapsack and pulled out a pink knitted sock. She examined the yarn, rubbing it between her thumb and forefinger. This sock is slightly misshapen, probably knitted by hand, ready for SOC. said Iris. Magnolia nodded, closed her eyes, and let her mind flow like a stream. The first image that popped into her mind was a knitted coaster, Constellation Diner. At Constellation Diner, Levi made pancakes that looked like the surface of the moon, and matzo balls the size of comets. He knitted circular orange coasters to look like meteors that were scattered along the countertop. Magnolia had always wanted to enjoy a mug of coffee on a coaster, but her mom said no caffeine until she was 13 because it would stunt her growth. Magnolia often went alone, and instead of charging for each pancake Magnolia ate, Levi kept a tally on a piece of paper taped next to the cash register. Mrs. Wu would come at the end each month to pay for them all at once. Magnolia and Iris walked in, met by the sounds of clinking spoons and sizzling eggs and ice cubes jostling around in plastic cups. "Have a seat, Magnolia. I'll have your pancakes out soon," said Levi, flying by in a white apron. They hoisted themselves onto the stools at the counter. "What'll it be today? 2, 4, 6?" said Levi. "Just 2 pancakes today," said Magnolia. "6? Did he say 6?" said Iris. "Sometimes I eat 6, said Magnolia. "If I'm having a low day, 8.
What is your record for pancakes eaten in a sitting? Is it 8 like Magnolia or less than that? I would say once a weekend or once every other weekend, I try to make some homemade pancakes for my children, and I can make anywhere from 3 to 6 pancakes for them. But I also try to do fun pancakes. So like last weekend, we had dinosaur sprinkle pancakes, and the boys helped me make them. Weeks before that, I've put the pancake mix inside of a Ziploc bag and kind of squeezed out their names. So each pancake was a different letter, and both of their names have 6 letters in them. So on top of that, I also kind of drew little heart shapes, and so they had about 7 pancakes that day, but that might be the record. Have you beaten that record, or do you have tiny little pancakes where you can have 20 little pancakes? The pancakes in front of this very hungry-looking Magnolia seem to be pretty big. They're almost the size of the plate. Now, Mari, actually last weekend, requested a very, very large pancake. So he had one giant plate-sized pancake last weekend. However, that's not usually the norm. What about you? What's the most pancakes you've ever eaten in a sitting?
5 minutes later, Levi set down the pancakes. "Careful, plate hot," he said. "Extra sugar for our new guest." As Levi sprinkled the powdered sugar over the pancakes, Iris was mesmerized by the white dots drifting down like she was seeing snowfall for the first time. "Parents good? Everybody good?" said Levi. "Tell your parents not to work too hard." This is what Levi always said. Every time, Magnolia would nod, even though they both knew that Levi and her parents would always be working too hard. Magnolia had never seen Levi take a day off. Even when the electricity went out, or it flooded, or everyone had fled New York, there was Levi. "Where do you keep your yarn?" said Magnolia, hoping to find the same pink-colored yarn as the sock. Levi was already walking away, arms full of plates smeared with ketchup and half-eaten pickles. "Drawer under the register," he called over his shoulder. "It's all the yarn I got." Magnolia pulled open the drawer and peeked inside. There were bent forks and mustard packets and balls of orange and black yarn, but no pink. The yarn was wrapped in a paper label. On the back of the label, written in tiny print, it read, "Nitty Bitty NYC. Here for all of your knitting needs. 850 Hudson Street." "All right, let's take our pancakes on the go," said Magnolia. "How do you take pancakes on the go?" said Iris. Magnolia rolled up her pancake like a thick flute, poured syrup down the hole in the center, and chomped off the end. By the time they got to Nitty Bitty, their fingers were sticky, and their foreheads were glossy with sweat. Nitty Bitty was in a small brick building, a few steps below ground level. There were stacks of wire baskets filled with skeins of yarn and silk threads the color of asparagus and chili peppers and dandelions. A man with a dangling golden earring sat behind the counter, embroidering the Statue of Liberty onto a pillow. "Hello," said Iris, pulling out the pink knitted sock. "Do you happen to sell this pink yarn?" "Oh, sure," he said. "That pink color is a favorite of one of our biggest customers, a lady named Nala. She places all of her orders online. I've never actually seen her in person." "I see," said Iris. "Any chance you know Nala's last name?" "Or where she lives?" said Magnolia. "Or what she looks like?" said Iris. "Or how to reach her?" said Magnolia. The man shook his head. "Have to respect customer confidentiality."
Pausing right there. Do you know what this word means? Confidentiality. He is a business owner. And if someone comes in and says, well, where do they live? Give me her address. Or what does she look like? How do we get a hold of her? Give us her phone number. There's something called confidentiality, which means if you give someone your information, usually like a business or even like a doctor's office, they can't share that out with anybody. It's confidential. So if you don't know this word, go ahead and pause the video and look it up. You can write this definition down and the vocab word down. But he's saying he shook his head. So he's shaking his head no, saying that he has to respect her privacy. So if she's placing her orders online, someone can't come in and say, give me her address. That would be weird if someone just showed up to your house. Your information should be kept confidential.
If you manage to meet her in person, please thank her for her business. That sock is beautiful work. You're lucky to have one of her pieces. Magnolia was ready to go find Nala, but she knew she had to get home. We have to say a proper goodbye to Alan and Auntie May, said Magnolia. Back outside the laundromat, Magnolia paused and turned to Iris. "Do I have powdered sugar on my face?" she said. As Iris brushed some powdered sugar off her ear, Magnolia thought of her young mom saying, "Check me," to Auntie May. "All clear," said Iris. The moment they walked in the door, Mrs. Wu said, "Magnolia, you left a mess in the sink." Magnolia huffed and stomped up into the kitchen. She grimaced and reached her hand into the cloudy water to locate the slimy noodle mass. She was about to toss the noodles into the trash when Iris grabbed her wrist. "Wait!" Iris held out her hand, and Magnolia dropped the wad of noodles into her open palm. "Blah! What are you doing?" said Magnolia. "Get me a Ziploc bag! We have to preserve our evidence!" Magnolia rustled through the drawers for a bag. "During lunch, I was watching Alan eat," said Iris. "He was holding his chopsticks funny, one chopstick in each hand. That's when your aunt scolded him about playing with his food." Iris pinched the noodle mass at the corner and held it up so Magnolia could see what she'd seen. The noodles were woven together with the same intricate, elegant stitching as the sock. "No way," said Magnolia. "But Nala's the one who knitted the sock." "Exactly," said Iris, placing her finger on the painting stuck to the refrigerator door. She ran her finger along Alan's name backwards. Nala. Nala. Iris and Magnolia approached the table where the adults were still chatting, while Alan read a music theory book in the corner. "Alan, do you want to come hang out with us in the kitchen?" said Magnolia. Mrs. Wu squinted at her, suspicious. With nothing better to do, Alan followed them. Magnolia tossed the Ziploc bag of wet noodles onto the counter. "Talk," said Magnolia. "Gross," said Alan. Those are leftover noodles. Why are you showing them to me? Does this clear things up? Said Magnolia, dropping the pink knitted sock beside it. Alan glanced at the doorway, then leaned forward and spoke in a hushed, panicked voice. What's your deal? What do you want from me? Said Alan. So you did knit this? Said Magnolia, slightly stunned. Yes, I knitted the sock, and I knitted the noodles with my chopsticks. My mind drifts off of it naturally. So what, are you going to make fun of me? No, said Iris. It's a beautiful piece. Even the guy at the knitting store complimented it. Really? Said Alan. What else did he say? How do you get money to buy yarn? Said Magnolia, her mind still scrambling to catch up. I keep a percentage of the money I win for piano competitions. The rest goes to my college fund, said Alan. He lowered his voice for the next part. I can do more than just socks. This sock is just a piece of a larger ensemble. I have this vision, an entire runway of my knitted pieces. As Alan began talking, Magnolia thought he looked different. Not his hair or his glasses or anything. It was just that when he talked about what he loved, his face brightened, and his eyes widened, and his shoulders loosened, and his hands started dancing in the air. Alan became almost unrecognizable in a good way, and she felt like she was meeting him for the first time. Creating modern designs out of yarn makes the pieces feel striking but familiar, cozy and chic. Hoodies that unfurl into floor-length dresses, bucket hats that extend into scarves. I have so many ideas, just no time to execute them. Why haven't you ever talked about this? Said Magnolia. My mom buys clothes once a year, mostly from Costco, said Alan. Forget personal expression. All she cares about is practicality.
Do you go shopping every year for new clothes? Sometimes when I was growing up, I think it was yearly, towards August, my parents would take my sister and I shopping and we could pick out a couple new outfits for the brand new school year. But she's talking about practicality. So shopping at Costco, you could usually buy in bulk or buy 4 sets of shirts and get a pretty good deal. So it wasn't like personal expression where you get to shop at Old Navy and get your favorite colors, or I don't know, there's so many different places like Gap or I guess the Children's Place. But there's different stores, PacSun, that might have a cool theme or a style that you might like. And that's not what Alan's mom is about. She's about saving money and getting clothes that are his size.
You have to show her, said Magnolia. No way. As soon as she finds out about this, it's over. I just have to wait until I'm 18 and out of here. I'm going to make it big, so that by the time she finds out, she'll be so satisfied with my success that she won't stop me. It's all planned out already. I don't need you interfering. Are all the dishes clean? Said Mrs. Wu, appearing in the doorway. Yes, Alan is helping me unclog the sink, said Magnolia. Alan shot Magnolia a look that said, if you say anything, I'll pluck your eyeballs out and feed them to the ducks. Magnolia had assumed that Alan's artistic talent had been squashed and traded in for what was expected of him. But it was still there, bubbling right below the surface. She wanted him to be able to yell his ideas from the mountaintops, to share his gift of creating. He just had to time it right. Mom, can Alan hang out a little longer? Mrs. Wu looked at Magnolia like she'd asked to chug a gallon of cold mushroom soup. Yes, said Mrs. Wu. Maybe he'll inspire you to take up piano lessons. As soon as she left the room, he shuddered. I can't stand piano. Whenever I play, I imagine there are bugs on the keys and I'm squishing them. That's the only way to make it decently amusing. Magnolia felt strongly that Alan might be one of her favorite people in all of New York City. You know, I used to love coming here, but after a while, it made me sad, said Alan. Maybe this laundromat is boring to you. We are sitting on a gold mine. Every day, you get to see the fabric skin that people choose to put on. Leather vests, fish costumes, crochet gowns. Being here reminded me of everything I wanted to do, but I had no idea how to make it happen. It's going to happen, said Iris. This little patch of noodles is going to be worth a lot one day. What you can do is really special. And if someone doesn't think so, it's their problem, not yours. Someday, the whole world will get to enjoy your creation. But right now, it's just the three of us in a kitchen. I don't know how you'll get to that moment from this moment, but I know you'll get there, and we'll be rooting you on. Alan didn't respond, just leaned forward and scooped them into a hug. So Magnolia's cousin was a fashion designer. Even better, he wanted to be her friend again. The shock had led them to the most unpredictable outcome. Who knew what would happen next?
Okay, we're gonna stop at the flamingo sock in our adventure of Magnolia Woo unfolds it all. What are some things that have happened? Can you reflect on what we've just read about? There's a lot of interesting happening in this sock world, and we are unfolding a lot of it, isn't it? Kind of silly. Well, thank you so much for reading part 2 with me. We are almost halfway through our book, and I hope you have a fantabulous rest of your day. Keep reading. I'm so proud of you.